Good morning. Yes, here we are. Oh, another week is over. It is over, right? What is today? Oh my goodness, I can't remember. Do you ever have weeks like that it just seems like you don't even know what day it is anymore? That's been this week. And again, I think a lot of it is the last couple days my husband's doing this wonky schedule. So again, he came home late and told me that, yeah, he has to get up and go to work early. I guess there's somebody off because they got hurt. Somebody else had a they were scheduled to be able to take this time off. And he said there's like 4 people that are normally there that are not. And that's kind of what's caused all this mess. And so today will be the last day. Thank goodness for that, because it really makes it rough around here. But anyways, I did better today. I was a little more prepared. I just had this sense like I was, like the Holy Spirit was preparing me, saying, you know what, you need to be prepared for dinner earlier than usual. So I did. I made sure that I had everything that I needed, and it went really a lot smoother than yesterday. But that being said, I am going to try out a new cleaning formula for cleaning, and I made some up already, and I am actually going to test it out in my bathroom, and I'm going to get back with you, because if it works really good, I'll share it with you. If it doesn't, I will tell you what not to do. And I'll talk to you after a little bit. Well, I tried out that cleaner, and I deliberately wanted to find something for the bathroom. And so I'm going to show that to you. But there's also, I wanted to show you a carpet sanitizer that you use with baking soda and essential oils. So here we go. Okay, so for the bathroom cleaner, what we're going to use is we're going to use 1/4 cup of rubbing alcohol, 1/4 cup of white vinegar, and 2 cups of water, and 1/4 teaspoon of lemon essential oil, and 1/4 teaspoon, I use what's called Thieves. Thieves is a Young's Living essential oil. You do not have to use that. It's a blend of oils, and that particular essential oil called Thieves has clove, lemon, cinnamon bark, eucalyptus, and rosemary in it. And it's just very good for cleaning properties. We'll go ahead and we will pour in 1/4 cup of the alcohol, and then 1/4 cup of the vinegar, and I will get 2 cups of water. Okay, so there I have my water. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour my water into my container, and I already made this up, so I am just going to put a lid on this container when I am done making it for, when I need it in the future, because I wanted to test it out for you guys. So I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of the lemon and 1/4 teaspoon of the Thieves. And I just went ahead and added into my vinegar and alcohol mixture. Sorry, I just can't do that with the camera for some reason. I can't do both. And that's all you need. The next thing I wanted to show you was a carpet freshener that I found. And I've already actually made some up, but this one I made for the pets. This is has 10 drops of purification and 5 drops of Thieves, which are Young Living oil blends, and it's good for like where animals tend to be. And so I made just up a little bit of that. I wanted to make up some that I can use in my dining room and living room. And you can basically use whatever oils you want. It just takes 1 cup of baking soda. And if you go to the laundry area in Walmart or in your grocery store, you will find the big boxes of baking soda. Don't buy the ones that are in the baking section because these are so much cheaper and it's the same thing. So, that being said, I am going to use, again, it's a Young Living oil blend called Citrus Fresh. And all that is different kinds of oranges, mandarin oranges, regular oranges, and all that mixed in of different types of oranges. Basically, just use essential oils that are just 2 that you enjoy the smell of. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to put my 15 drops, because that's what it is, 15 drops of oil to a cup of baking soda. And I'm going to put my oil in there, and it does want to clump a little bit. So I used this little, I don't have a bigger one. I really need a bigger one. I don't know what happened to mine. And kind of blended it up. But what I found is that once I put it in this jar and I could shake it, that's when it really, you cannot see any little clumps of oil. It's totally blended. And you're supposed to let it sit for at least 20 minutes before you use it. And I do like to save my cans and my bottles, and so I'm just going to have my husband poke some holes in that, and I will have a shaker. And the other thing I like to do is our honey that we buy, the lids from the honey fit the canning jars. So I'm just going to have my husband then put some holes in this one, and then that way I can use this one in the living room and dining room. So I was really excited because I like to buy those Arm & Hammer carpet baking soda ones that have all those wonderful scents, but they're mainly chemicals. They're not essential oils, and essential oils are not going to hurt you. They're not going to hurt your pets. They're not going to hurt your baby as your baby's crawling on the carpeting. And so that's why I prefer to use essential oils. And I hope this helps somebody. Good evening, everyone. I hope everybody had a very nice day. And wow, this week just went on by past me. I tell you, I don't know where it went. Suddenly, it was Friday. Go figure. But tonight, I would like to continue our study in Philippians. And we are going to be reading from Philippians Chapter 1, verses 12 through 18. But I want you to know, brethren, that the things which happened to me have actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel, so that it has become evident to the whole palace guard and to all the rest that my chains are in Christ. And most of the brethren in the Lord, having become confident by my chains, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Some indeed preach Christ even from envy and strife, and some also from goodwill. The former preach Christ from selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing to aid affliction to my chains. But the latter out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, and in this I rejoice, yes, and will rejoice. The things that happened to Paul were, I am sure, very different from what he had planned. He was a great missionary. He was a world traveler and apostle and church planter who had started numerous churches, and now he's sitting in a Roman prison, chained to a guard. I don't think Paul had this plan for his life at all. But God is like that. He doesn't operate on our time schedule and doesn't usually accomplish things according to our plans. He does things we would never expect. I am sure many of us can testify in our own lives that it doesn't always turn out the way we expected or had planned. Although we need to trust that our plan was not the best plan and that God's plans are best all the time. One thing, though, about the Apostle Paul was that he was focused on eternal matters. Very quickly, God's plan began to unfold. Rather than being a church planter now, Paul would be training the next generation of church planters. Rather than going himself, it would be God's plan, at least for now, to have Paul train and equip the planters that would go instead of him. What the apostle learned firsthand was that God's ways are not man's ways, and his evangelistic strategy may not make sense to us. Paul's suffering brought about the advance of the gospel. Let's look at verses 12 and 13 one more time. I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel, so that it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. The first thing Paul was thankful for was his imprisonment had worked to advance the gospel. This is nothing new. The gospel has always been advanced through human sufferings. Down through the centuries, the greatest push forward came as Christians gave everything, including their lives, for its advance. An ancient church father, after witnessing the gospel moving forward through suffering, said, "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the gospel." Just a thought. In today's program-driven churches, we see classes and books written on how to share our faith, how to evangelize, how to get someone to accept Christ, what to say to them, and how to get them to accept you and your message. Yet, I've never heard anyone say this: go out into places that have never heard the good news and preach night and day. Speak with everyone about Christ and the good news. When they throw you in prison, preach to everyone there as well. Just a thought. Paul knew all along that God was sovereign over his creation, but now he sees it firsthand. God brought suffering to Paul not to punish Paul, but to advance his kingdom. God's ways are not man's ways. His evangelistic strategy may not make sense to us, but here, picture this. An imperial guard was chained to Paul. What do you think Paul talked about? Because Paul had a captive audience. Many were converted. Who better to get the gospel to the imperial soldiers, who would then in turn be dispatched all over the Roman Empire and share that good news with those they met? It seems like God knew what he was doing after all. That's why churches were popping up all over the ancient world that Paul didn't even know about. But the Lord knew all along what would happen. Paul's suffering brought about boldness in others. I want to read the next verses 14 to 18 in the New Living Translation, which might help us get a clearer understanding of these verses. And because of my imprisonment, most of the believers here have gained confidence and boldly speak God's message without fear. It's true that some are preaching out of jealousy and rivalry, but others preach about Christ with pure motives. They preach because they love me, for they know I have been appointed to defend the good news. Those others who do not have pure motives as they preach about Christ, they preach with selfish ambition, not sincerely intending to make my chains more painful to me. But that doesn't matter. Whether their motives are false or genuine, the message about Christ is being preached either way, so I rejoice, and I will continue to rejoice. Paul rejoiced and was encouraged when he discovered that the gospel was being preached more boldly because of his imprisonment. Paul's chains were not what he wanted. I'm sure that he would rather have been out and free. I'm sure that he would rather have been on the mission field planting churches. But he didn't wait for his circumstances to turn in his favor before he could do what God called him to do. And I want to end by saying we need to be faithful in the setting in which God has placed us. Whatever and wherever that may be, each of us can share the good news of Christ. And in the end, discover that we are right where God wants us, because that is our mission field all along. And so with that, I want to remind you, life happens. Let's enjoy it. Think about that. Wherever you're at right now, the sovereign God of this universe has placed you there. That's your mission field. Good night, and God bless.